and welcome to Scotty Kilmer Car Talk, where I use my 51 years experience to answer all your car questions. Remember, during the show, ask your questions in the live chat, and I'll give you real answers for your car questions. Not sponsored by anyone but the truth. First question is Daniel Fitch. Daniel says, I got a 2010 Ram 2500. The back right caliper keeps locking. I changed the caliper, pulled the ABS fuse, and it's still doing it. Okay, here's the thing. If it's locking up, first thing you want to do now is change the rubber brake hose that goes to that caliper. Because what can happen is they can collapse inside the rubber. So when you hit the brake, there's thousands of pounds pressure pushing that fluid to shut it down. But when you take your foot off the brake, there's only a little suction pulling it off. And if that brake hose is collapsed, it'll stick on. That's what it is most of the time. Because let's say you had a bad master cylinder, the master cylinder sends fluid to both back ones. So if the right one was sticking, the left one should stick too. So it's probably just the hose has gone bad. They're changed that. It's an easy fix if it is. Next question. Dimitri Board says, hey, Scotty, I'm a college student. I need a reliable, cheap car. I'm looking to keep insurance down. Any suggestions, and where should I look for it? Okay, you want a reliable, cheap car. You can't beat something like a Toyota Corolla or a Honda Civic. You're going to get an older one if you want a cheaper one. And Craigslist is a good place to start looking because, of course, if you go to the car lots, they generally charge 2 to 4 times what they paid for a vehicle when they're selling you a used car at a professional dealer. So you kind of want to stay away from them. But, of course, now you never know, depending on the area you live in. Say you live in an area where there's a lot of old people and they can't drive anymore, they die, or they go to an old folks home, they can't have a car. There's nothing wrong with getting like, a 15-year-old Ford or something that doesn't have that many miles on it, and you get it cheap. Try to find one of those if you can't. If you can't find a Toyota or a Honda, a lot of people will do that. Next question. Sakurai says, hey, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying a sporty drift weekend toy around 10 grand. What's your suggestion? Well, it depends on what you want to drift around with. 10 grand isn't that much for speed machines, but if you want to spend that kind of money and for a weekend toy to drift, get a Mustang. You can't beat that. Get a V8 Mustang with a standard transmission, and they drift quite well. That was the one problem with them, was they'll spin easy because they got so much power and the weight's in the front, not in the back. But you want to spin, a Mustang would be a good one for that. Make sure you get the V8. The 6s are a little, they're not as good, but you get a good V8 one. There's plenty of Mustangs out there with a standard transmission, and you can drift to your heart's content with one of those. Generally, the Japanese rear-wheel drive ones, there's not that many of them, and people like them, and they cost a lot more, where you can get plenty of Mustangs to fool around with. Next question. Mageto Elijah says, Scotty, can a bad oxygen sensor give me bad gas mileage? Well, of course it can if it really goes bad. But here's the thing that you have to understand about oxygen sensors. Oxygen sensors measure the residual oxygen that's in your exhaust, and that tells the computer. So the computer will always try to make your car run at the perfect stoichiometric ratio, which is like 14.7 parts air to 1 part gasoline. So generally, the oxygen sensors are just telling you how your system's working. And if an oxygen sensor shows that your system is running rich, more often it's a problem like a leaking fuel injector. You got a problem that's making the engine have too much gasoline in it, so more comes out the exhaust, and then the oxygen sensor tells you it's running rich. It's not usually the problem itself. Now, oxygen sensors, like anything else, can wear out over time. And let's say you got an old junker that burns a bunch of oil. Well, that oil burning is going to clog up the oxygen sensor and give it false readings, of course. But most of the time, the oxygen sensors are telling you of a different problem in the car, and it's not the sensor themselves. Next question. Ryan Dunleavy says, I bought an old 82 F-150 300 straight six cylinder for $900. It's cold in North Dakota. Drive it 5 miles on a highway, puttering down the road. Doesn't seem like it's getting power. What's the issue? Okay, well, what are you talking about? 27-year-old truck. There could be a zillion different problems. You'd start out with the most simple thing would be change the spark plugs, the air filter, the fuel filter, then see what happens. If it still does it, then you'd want to pressure test the fuel pump. A weak fuel pump will do the whole thing. And you only paid, what'd you say, you paid $900? You might, if you got a compression gauge or a friend with one, just do a wet and dry compression test of the engine. I've got videos for that on YouTube. And see if the engine's just flat worn out. Because if it's that old and you find out that the pressure in the cylinders are low, it's just a worn out engine. And that's so easy to test on those. It'd take you 15, 20 minutes. You might start by checking the engine to see, hey, is this thing worn out? Or is the engine good and I can fill it with other stuff? Next question. Chad Null says, I got an Audi V8. I'm looking at a cheap way to clean intake valves. How can I be concerned? Should I be about destroying my cat? Thank you. Okay. Well, Audi, the company itself, it tells people not to use cleaners because they say if you get carbon build up, the carbon can get out if it breaks off. Not only can it ruin the catalytic converter, if you have a turbocharged ones, it can get in and ruin your turbocharger. They advise you not to do it at all. But if you want to do it, I've got a video on how to make your car run better with a little spray cleaner. Watch that. Those cleaners are pretty safe cleaners. I use them all the time on customers' cars, and I've never had any problems with them yet. So you might try that. How to make your car run better with a little spray cleaner. It costs you like $15 for the cleaner. Just follow the directions to a T to what I show, and you're not going to hurt anything generally. Next question. Anthony from 300 says, Scotty, I got an '01 Lexus ES 300 and the paint clear coat is chipping. Any cheaper way to fix it? Okay. If the clear coat is coming off and you still got good paint underneath, you can try to re-clear coat it. Buff it all off really well first and try to re-clear coat it. And you're going to get it as good as you can without spending a fortune. The problem is the human eye can see all kinds of gradation of color. All cars these days, they have a paint base, and then the clear coat makes it shine. Even if you buff off the area where the clear coat is chipping and then re-clear coat it, it's almost impossible to get the same layer of clear coat because some of the edge is going to have thicker one, some of it's going to have thinner, and your eye can see that reflecting off. Your eye's going to be able to see that. But that's the best thing you can do is to buff off the bad parts and then try to re-clear coat it as good as you can. It won't be totally perfect, but it can look better. The only way to really do it is to pay a pro, if the paint is still good, to just take off the clear coat that's on it, get down to the base coat, and then re-clear coat the whole thing. Because clear coat is clear coat, it's clear. You can match it if the paint's still good and you do a whole fender. It'll look the rest of the car because the base coat is what's the color, but you still would have to do the whole fender because you're never going to be able to get one layer on top of another perfectly. It's pretty much impossible to do. Next question. Petrus says, good morning, Scotty. I plan on buying a 2015 Acura TLX. What do you think? Is it a good pick over C-Class Mercedes or 3 Series BMW? Yes, for that it is. Acuras, as they age, they get to be more expensive to repair than, say, a Toyota by far or a Lexus. But they generally don't start falling apart till they're 10 years or older. Where the Mercedes and BMWs, they're endless money pits from the very beginning. You're much better off buying the Acura if those are the choices that you want to do. Because, the Mercedes and BMWs, now, you can get used ones a lot cheaper because their resale values are garbage. But they're going to cost you a lot more to fix. The resale value of the Acura is actually higher percentage-wise than the BMW and the Mercedes. Because it is a better made car in the long run. Next question. Bisa, Scotty, my dad wants to buy a 71 VW bus. Any thoughts? Okay, I guess he was a hippie back in the day, right? Now he wants to relive his hippie days, or he wants to pretend he's a hippie. Uh, those are very simple vehicles. They're pretty easy to work on. The problem with those buses now, they're becoming very popular because a lot of the people who were hippies in the 60s are now have money to spend. So they go for an awful lot of money. I've seen them around here in Texas. Some of those things are going for $15,000, $20,000. And to me, that's a lot of money for a thing that can barely get out of its own way. They have very weak power little engines. But if he really wants one, hey, the parts are readily available. They're easy to work on. You know, they're fun vehicles to drive around if he doesn't mind spending the money that he's got to spend. Anything in it's fixable, parts are available, and if he really likes one and has the money to spend, hey, he can go right ahead. Next question. Super Renio says, when I drove my car, it started spitting oil after a transmission fluid change. Okay, I'm assuming whoever did the change put too much fluid in. All automatic transmissions have to be vented because of the way they're designed. So they all have a little vent. Usually the vent has a check valve, so it can't suck water or anything, and it can only spit the fluid out. Some fool put too much fluid in it. Automatic transmissions, most of them hold a lot of fluid. Some of them hold 18, 21 quarts of fluid. And they get hot, and as they get hot, the fluid expands. And if they put too much fluid, when it expands, it's going to start spitting the fluid out of that vent hose. So you want to make sure it doesn't have too much fluid. Have it checked. If there's too much fluid, drain it out so it's got the right amount of fluid. Odds are that's what it is. I see that all the time. People put too much fluid in, and when it heats up, it starts spitting the fluid out. Now, if it's not transmission fluid or something else, then whoever did the work messed up and they knocked a hose or a line or something off, and take it back to them and have them fix the problem they created in the first place. Next question. Stephen Rankin said, Scotty, I got an '03 Nissan Frontier. I'd never changed it to automatic transmission fluid. Should I do it now? Thanks. Well, if it's working perfectly fine, no. And here's why. When fluid is working the automatic transmission, it uses fluid dynamics to drive your car. It's actually the fluid and the friction inside that's inside the torque converter that's making your car go. And it has to be that way because in an automatic transmission, you step on the brake and come to a stop, the engine is still spinning. If it was a standard transmission and you had it in gear, the car would stall. The reason automatics don't stall is because they have the torque converter, and that has some slippage, and when you just stopped, it slips and it doesn't stall the engine. Well, when you get an old vehicle and the fluid gets dirty, dirty fluid has more friction in it. And if you change it now and put real clean fluid in, it's more slippery. And I've seen people do that. And then the transmission slips, and it didn't before they changed the fluid. That old, I'd leave it alone. If you buy it brand new and change it every 40, 50, 60,000 miles, you keep doing it. If you don't, and you got a lot of mileage, don't change it now. You could destroy things. Why gamble? That thing's got a certain lifespan anyway. It's a Nissan automatic transmission. It's going to wear out anyways. I wouldn't push my luck on that. Henry Nig says, good day from Australia, Scotty. Would you recommend the Toyota 86 as the first manual car? Also in Australia, there are restrictions on first cars. What other North American standard cars would you recommend? Okay, interesting. Restrictions on first cars. I guess they don't want you to have too much horsepower. They know you Aussies are all crazy, huh? Yeah, the Toyota 86, you know, it's a Subaru. It's got the boxer Subaru engine. Toyota, for some weird reason, they make great cars, but they've always messed with sports cars with other people's engines. The first real Toyota sports car that they made, I think it was called the 3000 or something. It was made in the 60s, and they only had a few thousand of it. It had a Yamaha engine in it. And then the Celicas for a while had a Yamaha motorcycle basically designed engine, and now they're going with Subaru. And Subarus can have problems here and there, but if you get a standard transmission in one, that's their weak points, the automatics. They're fun to drive. I got a customer that bought one, and I do have to say, I'm relatively disappointed. They did buy an automatic transmission, and to me, it was a very slow car. With the standard, they bought the standard one. They had an automatic transmission, but they bought the standard. It's not turbo or supercharged or anything, and I thought it was kind of a slow car, but if you get a standard transmission, it'd be a lot quicker. It'd be fun to drive, and I'm sure it'll last. Next question. Mr. Anaconda says, Scotty, do you recommend a specific Honda Civic between 2008 to 2011 for Uber and Lyft or another car maker? Okay. The Civics are great cars, but like any Hondas, the automatics are a little weak. If you're going to get a Civic, get a standard transmission one, and it can run forever. If, on the other hand, you got to have an automatic, get a Toyota Corolla. They make great Uber cars, you know. There's absolutely nothing wrong with buying them, either standard or automatic. Those are the two I'd really stick for because they have the least maintenance and less problems, and you can drive them forever. Next question. Daniel Geraldo says, Scotty, I have a manual car and it still has a cable. Makes a strange noise when I push the clutch after I push it a whole bunch of times, though. The sound goes up here. What could it be? Okay, well, it's a cable. So the first thing you want to do is get yourself a flashlight, you know, one of those little bitty ones like I have that are super bright. And look at both ends of the cable where you step on it under the dash, and then at the other end where it goes into the transmission. And make sure the cables aren't fraying. If those cables are fraying, they're a bunch of strands together. If some of them are frayed, get another cable assembly right away. If they aren't frayed, get some good lubrication oil. I'm a motorcycle guy, so you can go to any motorcycle shop or go to Amazon or eBay and buy a can of motorcycle cable spray lube. It's a special lube just for cables. And lubricate the thing. And then it's a good idea to lubricate cables anyways. They never tell you to because they want them to wear out, but if you do, they last a lot longer. Next question. Hot Bolando says, Scotty, I got an '07 Toyota Tundra that needs air pumps. They say for smog. Can I just unplug them since they cost over $2,000 to replace? Okay, here's the thing. That was a design flaw on that V8 engine. It was a very poor design. And if it runs okay otherwise, all it is an anti-pollution device. If you live in an area where they don't do anti-pollution inspection on your cars and you unplug it, no one's going to know and no one's going to care. But if you live in an area where you get your car inspected, it's never going to pass the inspection legally. So that's more or less your choice. I know I got people call me from North Dakota and said, Scotty, they don't inspect anything here. We take everything off, catalytic converters, smog pumps. And if nobody cares, you know, you realize you're going to be polluting the air a little bit more. But if you live in an area where they do inspections, you'll never get it legally inspected. All that stuff. Sometimes on the Toyotas, if it does break and if it sucks too much air, it'll make it run way too lean and it'll actually run poorly. And then you'd have to fix the stupid thing. I've seen a bunch of them here where they run okay, but they just tripped the code for that smog pump because they basically built them wrong. You take it off and it runs better. Like I say, it's not going to hurt anything other than you can't get it legally inspected if you live in an area where they legally inspect it. Next question is Modern Day Hustler. We recently bought an '05 Crown Victoria for the first time driver. What do you think? We paid $2,000 on it. It's 96,000 miles. Is that a good deal? Hey, if it runs good and works good, yeah, that's a good deal. Everybody knows those are called grandpa cars and grandma cars, but they can last a long time. 96,000 miles is nothing for one of those. It's probably got that 5-liter V8 and those engines can run forever. And since it's a newer one, '05, on the highway, I've got customers that get 20-something miles a gallon driving them around on the highway. It can be a very good car. And of course, it's very safe. So it's so big. So it's a first-time driver. They're going to feel a lot safer inside of one of those than you are in a little bitty Honda Civic or a smart car or something because it is a big car and it has airbags. Stunny of One says, Scotty, what do you think about certified pre-owned vehicles, particularly Lexus? Okay. Certified pre-owned, to me, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's just they put a name on it and they charge more money because they're all at dealerships. I'll give you an example. I once went to a Toyota dealership. Customer paid me to check out a car for him. And I checked it out and I'm checking it out and I looked. It was a quart low on oil and the oil was dirty and it was said it was a certified pre-owned vehicle. So I told the guys at the dealer, I said, the thing was low on oil and it was dirty. And they said, oh, well, we haven't changed the oil yet. I said, it doesn't matter. It's too late. It's dirty and it's burning oil. The engine's been damaged. And I told my customer not to buy it. And of course, all they'd have to have done would be to change the oil before I checked it, and I would have never noticed that. But they didn't. A lot of it is a bunch of malarkey. They don't have anybody that goes with a fine-tooth comb to check it out, It's just a sales gimmick, And since they're all at dealerships, they charge too much money for their cars anyways. I once bought a Toyota Celica for my son for $900, and he drove it for ages. And that same one, when I was looking for one, I found a Toyota Celica that was the same age. It was 15 years old at a Toyota dealer, and it had 50,000 miles more than the one I paid $900 for, and they wanted $6,500 for it at the dealer. So, and it was certified pre-owned. Bunch of malarkey, if you ask me. Next question. Zedelef says, I got an ABS light on a 2010 Toyota 3S FE engine. Code scanner just says ABS failure, cables look fine, possible culprits. Okay, here's the thing about ABS. Anti-lock braking systems are all run by computers. There's sensors on each wheels. They're very complicated systems. You got a cheap scanner and it just says ABS failure. You got to find a guy like me that has one of these scanners. This is a $5,000 one. We go in, we can see the wheel speed sensors, we can see I'll get like 50 lines of data on the ABS system, and I can figure out what it is. You can't work on them without one of those computers and a guy who knows how to operate it. Now, most ABS systems are fail-safe. If the ABS breaks, it goes back to normal, non-ABS brakes like most of my cars are, and that's perfectly fine. But if you want it fixed, you're going to have to find a guy like me that's got an expensive machine, because you're not going to go buy a $5,000 machine and learn how to operate it. Just, if you can find a guy like me that says they'll check it out for $85, pay him $85, and they'll tell you what they found wrong with it. Next question. Jay Johnson says, Scotty, I'm thinking about buying a used Prius 5. What should I watch out for? Well, one, I wouldn't buy a used hybrid car because they're too complex, and when they get old, they cost an absolute fortune to repair. But if you're going to buy a used one, pay a guy like me to check it out beforehand, because that machine that I just showed you that cost me $5,000, I plug that into that Prius, I will get thousands of pages of data that can be analyzed. And the thing about the machines that I have is they're color-coded machines. So data will be green, meaning it's good, yellow, meaning that it's in between, and red, meaning it's bad. So it's not like I'm looking through 1,000 pages of data and have to analyze them all, and you're going to pay me $100 an hour for 100 hours of analysis. I scan through it, the big ones. I scan through it, and I see any yellow or red, then I start further analyzing that, and the green ones I ignore. So you got to pay a mechanic to check out one of those. Don't ever think about buying one without a mechanic checking out who knows all about Priuses and understands how they work. And if you want to gamble it, go right ahead, but you got to pay a mechanic to check it out first on one of those. Maverick Shock says, good morning, Scotty. My '04 Honda keeps shutting off every time I stop or turn it on. You know what the problem is? Thanks. Keep doing what you're doing. Oh, I'm having fun. I'm not going to stop. If it keeps shutting down, the first things you do is the obvious things. Take out your air filter. I've had more customers bring me cars. The only thing wrong was the air filter was filled with crud. You might just need an air filter. Now, if it doesn't, there are things that can get dirty and clog up. Watch my video. Make your car run better with a little spray cleaner. Just type that in on Google or YouTube, and my video will come up. You can get 2 cans of the spray cleaner. It'll cost you, I don't know, $14 combined, from take you maybe 45 minutes to run them through and clean it. And that might solve the whole thing. I see it all the time. If not that, listen for vacuum leaks. If you hear a while you're driving down the road, or you open the hood, you hear it sucking air, it's a vacuum leak, and fix the vacuum leak, because that'll do it too. Next question. Joseph Kunle says, Scotty, what do you think about the Chinese car brands selling cars in Europe now? They're at great prices. This is a good buy. Okay. It's like everything else made in China. There's good things And there's bad things. You know, you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to tell one from the other until they've been out for a really long time, or you're not going to be able to tell until you buy one and experiment with it and see what happens. Now, from what I've seen in my experience with people all over the world that email me, that company Geely, Geely, I guess, they make pretty good vehicles. And if it's one of those, ah, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to buy one. You got to do a little research first. Eventually, they're probably going to be selling cars all over the place because I know GM now sells more cars in China than they do in the United States. But those are all made in China. They don't sell them in the United States yet. But I'm sure one day they will. Just like Ford announced that they weren't going to be making cars anymore in the United States, just SUVs and pickup trucks. And the Mustang, which was a big Ford seller. But they're making cars in China, and I'm sure at some point in time they'll probably start importing them to Europe and the United States and selling them. So, eventually they'll probably be making really good cars. But you want to do a little research first on which models people have had and which ones had the least problems. And they don't sell them here yet, so I can't say from my experience. Ivan. My Toyota Care is ending soon in a 17 Tacoma. After it ends, I'm going to do oil changes. Do you think it's a good idea to stick with all Toyota products like oil filter, oil, and antifreeze? Well, doesn't really matter as long as you use the quality stuff. Now, you want to stick to like their antifreeze. Toyota uses what's called a HOAT, H-O-A-T, Hybrid Organic Acid Technology. But you don't have to Toyota. You can buy them from somebody else. It really doesn't make all that difference as long as you buy that same quality. Realize Toyota doesn't make coolant. They don't make engine oil. They don't make transmission fluid. They just buy it from somebody else. So as long as you're getting stuff that has the same specs, it's perfectly fine to use them. Next question. Eric Caraballo says, Scotty, I recently bought an '06 Scion TC with 112,000 miles for $2,000. It just needs dent repair on the quarter panel. Is that a good buy? Oh, yeah. That's what I tell people to do all the time. I said, if you want to save money buying a Toyota or a Honda, get one that's got body damage. As long as the mechanic says, well, no, that's just body damage. It didn't hurt anything. It's a fender or a bumper or something. Because body work can cost a lot of money to get done perfectly, but it really lowers the value of the car. And if you don't care about dents, like you live in New York City, where you're going to get more dents anyways. People like pre-dented cars in New York City because then they're not buying a nice undented car and get mad when somebody smashes into it. They just say, well, it's already a New York City car, has the dents built in. So you got a good deal. There's nothing wrong with that. Next question. James Martin says, Scotty, I have a 2000 Celica. New water pump is leaking badly. I believe the coolant is getting past the O-ring. What gives? Okay, first of all, if you did buy a water pump from that, you're better off buying an OEM water pump. And like I said before, you don't have to go to Toyota. Lots of places make these nip and dental pumps and stuff that you can buy. You don't have to buy them from Toyota. But you don't want to buy one of these cheaply made, the cheapest Chinese ones out there and put it on because a lot of times they're poorly made. But when you do a water pump job, you have to make sure the mating surfaces are perfect. You have to clean them off. I have special little thin scrapers. Sometimes I use razor blades. You got to get all the old material off. And then if you got one that's got the O-ring on it, put the O-ring on the pump first. And when you do that, put a little bit of weather stripping glue, put the O-ring on the pump, then let it dry for about an hour. Then it's not going to fall off and move. Then when you wiggle it back in place, it's not going to leak. Even I, in my many years of fixing cars, have had ones where I didn't do that. The O-ring slipped when I put it on and then it leaked. So you want to check that too. That does happen. Next question. Phil Harley says my toy. Pardon me. Phil Harley says my '05 Toyota MR2 Spider central remote locking only works intermittently sometimes. I had the problem with both keys and the batteries new. Any idea? Yeah, they had problems with those systems. It's unfortunate, but the receiving unit that's in there, the control module, goes bad on those things as they age. They cost a small fortune to buy, and then they have to be reprogrammed. If I were you, I'd just live without the thing, because if you price what it costs to buy the parts for that, it's cost you so much money. And I had quite a few customers with them as they aged. Those things just broke down, and I just say forget it, because unless you're willing to spend a whole bunch of money replacing that module and having it reprogrammed, it's really not worth it. That's it for today. Remember, every day of the week I upload new videos on the Scotty Kilmer channel, so subscribe and hit the magic bell so you get notified. Otherwise, they won't notify and you won't know when a new video is coming up. And I'm here on YouTube Live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time to answer your questions, and Thursday at 1 p.m. Central Time in the afternoon. I'll catch you on Thursday if I don't see you till then.